Because the health and fitness world can get a little nutty, it's time for Body Kindness. Today we're going to talk about kids and weight.
We'll discuss how your body kindness practice could help younger ones you love and many families you don't even know.
Hello and welcome to Body Kindness. I'm your host and your coach, Rebecca Scritchfield. And I've got Burnie Salazar here with me today.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Excited you're here with us today.
So today we're going to talk about kids and weight, and it's a touchy subject to say the least, but there's been some changes recently that I think really could make a very significant impact on the health of people in this country should these new recommendations take hold. And I'm talking about the recommendations that are new from the American Academy of Pediatrics and published in the September issue of Pediatrics, the journal. They came out with new guidelines for preventing obesity and eating disorders in adolescents. And these guidelines replace guidelines from 2007. And there's a really dramatic difference in what they are recommending, which, I mean, to me, it just sounds like common sense. But, you know, the medical establishment does not always follow, you know, common sense guidelines. But I'm very excited about what I see here. They could always do more, in my opinion. I'll talk a little bit about that later. But I wanted to start, Burnie, actually by telling you a story that happened to a friend of mine. And she basically was over one day and she said, you know, I've got to tell you about what happened the other day. You're not going to believe it. And essentially she was at the doctor's with her son. His shirt was off and, you know, he was getting his weight and everything. And the doctor turned around and started talking about his weight and basically said, you don't want to look like a doughboy, do you? And poked his belly.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
That's just horrible. And you know what? I mean, first of all, I want to chime in really quick on the guidelines. I didn't know that 2007 was the last time that they released something. The fact that it's 2016, you know, again, that just, it's scary that they've literally let, you know, what is that, 9 years pass. That situation with your friend is very sad, but not uncommon. I've had doctors, you know, my entire life kind of do the same type of thing to me. And it got to the point where I just hated going to doctors. Mm-hmm. They unfortunately had no training in how to address the weight issue when it came to children. And I definitely fell victim to that. And I'll tell you what, I want to send a big hug out to that little guy. Mm-hmm. Just tell your friend, I hope she doesn't mind. I'm hugging him because I was there, I was him, and you know what? It all works out. It does. And I'm glad that she was able to tell you that story and saw a red flag there, you know, and I hope she said something to that doctor, and that's what we need to start doing, you know? Yeah.
Well, she told me that she just basically froze, and, you know, I think she was shocked basically. And she actually second guessed herself, like, you know, maybe he's right. And then she's like, but he's, you know, and she, you know, I don't like this word, but she, you know, said, you know, but he's barely chubby. Like he has a little bit more fat than his brothers or sisters. And that's, you know, she said she just kind of grabbed his shirt and ran out of there. She was so frustrated. And actually she regrets not saying something. But, you know, I think that anyone who is in this vulnerable position, you know, and becomes hurt by, you know, a medical professional or a health professional, somebody who's supposed to be helping, it is very shocking. And the thing that is probably one of the most scary things to me from that situation is, so it's a 10-year-old boy. He plays soccer and baseball. His dad is a Marine and a marathoner.
Wow.
his mom likes to run and do yoga and cook. They have bees in their yard. Like, not just a garden. They have a garden and get their vegetables and strawberries. They have bees. I mean, they wear the bee mask. They collect the honey.
They have their own
yes.
hive.
Yes.
Nice.
Exactly.
Nice.
They do this for fun. So these are not the kind of people who ignore health and well-being. I mean, well-being is woven into the fabric of their family values. But the doctor never even asked about lifestyle. He just handed the judgment,
You know what? And mom, I'm talking to this mom. Don't you worry about what you did or didn't do in that moment. You are modeling what it means to live healthy and kind every day for your children. I think that those situations will catch anybody off guard. Next time we'll be more prepared. We'll have some type of a response, but you know what? Don't you worry about it. And I say that as the kid that was on the table, having gone through it, he's going to be just fine. And sure, he's going to grow up to be very active and a great beekeeper himself.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, to me, that's kind of what I was thinking, like knowing her and her family. And I'm like, and again, we could say maybe this is just one bad apple doctor, but that's not the truth. It is a pervasive cultural problem, and it impacts our most vulnerable kids, and we let that happen.
Absolutely. Well, here's the thing. I mean, let's be very honest. I mean, no, I did not go to medical school, but I highly doubt that they had a methods course on how to interact when it comes to children and weight and how to communicate with various age groups. I mean, look, again, it took 9 years for this new set of guidelines to come out. And let me tell you, when you sent this over to me, I read them and I started cheering. And then I started looking deeper into it, like, oh my gosh, how am I going to now integrate some of these things into my family and work this with my daughter? And I want to encourage our readers, and Rebecca, please, let's include this link in our show notes, because whether you are a nutritionist or you're in the field or you work with children or a doctor, I think everybody, parents, aunts, uncles, educators, anybody who has any type of child in their life can benefit from reading these new guidelines.
Yeah, I mean, we will share the links. I also wrote a post on Medium that I'll share as well.
Good.
Where I tell my friend's story and share a bunch of other stuff. I think, the beginning of any type of a change is awareness. You have to be aware of what's happening before you can make that next decision that can create the outcome you're looking for. It all starts with awareness. And so that's why we're talking about it on the show. That's why we're going to share the resources and links. We need the information, and we just need to know what is good and what is bad, what is helpful and what is harmful. And use that information, as a listener, take that information and then use your power, which is your voice. As you said, educators, everybody needs to do this. So no matter what you do in our culture, if you think that we could do better by our kids and improve their body image, reduce bullying, improve their self-esteem and self-worth, if you think that we could do better for all kids, then I think that you can take an action, sharing the blog post, sharing the information, making sure you understand it yourself, and then living it. And you definitely for parents, but you don't have to be a parent. You can be an aunt, uncle, influencer. Know what is the truth and then speak that truth in any way you can.
Absolutely. I mean, even if you're a neighbor and there's kids in your neighborhood, I remember growing up again, because quote unquote being an overweight kid, gosh, I mean, I had tons of people come up, they pinched your cheeks. Oh, he's just so chunky. He's still baby fat, this or that. And, when you start reading these new lines, it's just really reframing the way that we approach the conversation.
Right.
And I can tell you what, reading this is definitely going to influence the way that I allow what I can, certain members of the outside world, to interact with my little girl or my family, or, and I'm not talking about her size or the way she is, just in general. I want to make sure that we are having um, really valuable conversations and using the appropriate words when we talk about how we're going to incorporate health into our family.
Yeah. So, and we will bring this all back to body kindness too, but at the end of the day, when you're practicing body kindness yourself, you are impacting others because, and it even comes out in the guidelines, the modeling of the behavior is so important. But let's compare for a second the 2007 guidelines. So I'm just going to pick a couple things.
Okay.
So in 2007, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, kind of like what all pediatricians, it was okay to use the word obesity, despite having evidence, so obesity related to children, despite having evidence that that term basically caused more harm than good. So the evidence was there that, using the word obesity in the office had the potential to be harmful and not helpful. But that was still allowed through on the 2007 guidelines. It also was recommended to put kids on commercial weight loss diets and programs, shakes and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Hello. Happy birthday, Burnie, age 13. That's what I got, or that's what I was told I would get if I think did good in school or something. Hey, if you do really good in school for your birthday, we'll stick you on such and such. I won't name it, but thank goodness I didn't do good that grading period, so I didn't get that. But that was definitely offered, and I'll tell you what, and I say that, and I can laugh about it, but it was a loving thing that was trying to be offered to me. It's that misinformation, and the fact that the pediatrician probably said, hey, get this kid on something, because obviously it's not working at home.
Back then, do you remember your habits being off base of what you knew was normal back then? I mean,
No, not completely. Here's the deal. I mean, I was pretty much raised by a single mother. I did have a wonderful stepfather who was with us for quite a while, but for the most part, grocery shopping was done. There were things that were left in the fridge. They weren't horrible. There was fruit, there was vegetables, but there was a lot of convenience foods as well. There had to be. But no, I mean, whenever we could, we tried to eat together. It wasn't consistent, but it was there. I didn't see it as completely off. I didn't know anything else. But I if you would open up our cupboards, you wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, what are you feeding these kids? It wasn't that type of household.
Yeah. So, and that's straight up diet culture. That's exactly what that is. And I'm really sorry to hear that happen to you. I'm grateful as well you did not do good in school, because I mean, you put a kid on a diet and there's a good chance it's going to lead to eating disorder or worsening.
Well, it was interesting because when it was brought up, Rebecca, I was like, man, well, gosh, is that a good thing? Okay, I get to get on this program, I guess. I guess I never even thought that I needed it.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because as a kid, I'm telling you, as a little round Burnie, I didn't run around thinking to myself, man, I got to get this under control. I'm so different. This is hindering my life. No, I was an active little guy. I played baseball all the way up into my teens. I was very active. Every chance I got, I was out there.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, I was partaking in some of the concession stand treats as well, but I was there. I wasn't just sitting on the sidelines there. So yeah, I mean, it's those little instances that kind of make you think, well, gosh, what is there something wrong with me? Kind of like that word obesity. I heard that lots of times. I mean, I actually went through the stages. I heard morbid obesity. You know, you're
Mm-hmm.
morbidly obese. Oh my gosh. Well, I shouldn't be at your office then. I should probably be at a funeral home.
Yeah, that's well, I mean, and as you can see that that's the what you experience goes along the lines of what we've been told is okay for the medical establishment to do. And another part of the 2007 that was still in the 2007 guidelines was that in some cases to recommend weight loss surgery. I mean,
Yeah.
surgery on growing young kids. It's unfathomable for me to believe, but that's where we were at in 2007, and it has just been a very dramatic shift, and hopefully the beginning of a good one.
No, absolutely. And Rebecca, I want to chime in, and I don't know how you're going to take this, but being a parent, and you're a parent as well, in reading some of this in the 2007 guidelines and saying, well, gosh, if, this is what's being researched and it's okay, as a parent, I could see myself, wanting to help my child. And if weight loss surgery is part of it or getting them on this weight loss plan, you know, parents we're wonderfully confused
Mm-hmm.
with whatever's trending out there, and we try to run towards it right away. Um, I want to just kind of say, hey, parents, anybody who encouraged us back in the day, you're not horrible, but times they are a changing. I know they're changing for the better. So I almost want to just put that blanket statement out there. I don't know why I felt the need. I think I'm almost speaking to my mom,
Yeah.
because I know how much she cared for me, and thank God she never heard about the weight loss surgery, and thank God we didn't have the money to do it anyway. But I could see her being like, "I love you so much. Let's sign you up."
Yeah.
you know?
Well, I think a big message that's coming out of the body positive community and really fat activism
Hmm.
is the idea that bodies are not problems.
Hmm.
And in those, you even said I was little and her morbid obesity. What's the problem? Something wrong with me?
Oh yeah.
And as a culture, that is where we need to go. There is a growth in the body positivity movement, and I love it. But you also see a lot of hijacking of it. It's the same skinny white girl saying, just love yourself, and it's like what we really need is more activism around the idea that all bodies should be respected, and bodies are not problems, and even to the point, and I'm purely talking about, I mean, this is coming from a health expert and well-being expert, and everyone knows what I do, but even to the point of we have to be very careful with this idea of healthism, which is a whole other podcast to talk about. But just my little teaser, it's this expectation of like a good fatty. Well, you're okay because you're working on weight loss and you're doing all these things. You're okay. The truth of it is, there are poor lifestyle choices that people can make. We can choose to smoke. We can drink too much. We can cheat on our sleep. We can be physically inactive. Poor eating habits, yada, yada, yada. There's still an individual choice, and both thin and fat people make those choices. It's just the fat people who get the vitriol from it. It's the fat people who hear it. And so it becomes this idea that I'm going to judge you, or the way I'm going to approve and accept you is if you agree to commit to working on these changes. Now, I love helping people change their habits. Fat, skinny, black, white, brown, green, whatever. I love helping people change their habits. That's what I do. But as a culture, and I bring this up because you were talking about parents and being, basically forgiving of parents, or, specifically your mom. The shift is when, as a culture, we stop seeing bodies as problems and we start seeing our human connection, and that everybody should be respected. You can't tell how healthy or unhealthy a person is by looking at them. And yes, there are extreme low weights and high weights, that there are physical problems. There are thin people who have just as many knee problems as fat people. There are fat people who have no knee problems. It's when we make the judgment, and that's why judgment is bad. So in families, and in communities, there is a point for the stopgap. Wait a minute, I don't know what's going on in that person's life. And if you remember, I said awareness is the first step. You can be aware of your own bias. I just made a judgment about somebody else, knowing nothing about their life, and that's just me embracing that I still believe that fat is bad, or there's something wrong with being a large person. There's something wrong with fatness. And that's a culturally ingrained thing. You're not born with it, but it's a product of your belief system. But you change by challenging that. So I kind of veered off from the guidelines. We'll get back to them. But I really got to get that out there, that, in the bigger picture, what we can do in our own body kindness practice, keep taking good care of ourselves, be our own best friends, even if you want to change habits. And I want to help people change habits. I want people to have, be so satisfied and grateful for their new habits. I love my healthy habits. I really do. I love the way I take care of myself. But you can do that without fearing becoming fat, or if you are fat, embracing your well-being, and that fat is part of who you are, and seeing that as an identity. And the more we see that and verbalize that and vocalize that, and the more we say that all bodies are good bodies, and that, we promote this idea of, none ya business. Let people mind their own business and do what they want to do in their hearts. We have less stigma, we have less bullying, we have more acceptance, and we're actually creating the environment where people are more likely to do a better job at changing. Because if there's one thing we know for sure from research, and it's part of what fueled these new guidelines, is that weight stigma and shaming is more likely to lead to depression and eating disorders than it is to lead to someone to go join a gym or order a salad. It doesn't work.
Absolutely. I have been on every which side of that, and it's true. Whenever somebody says, gosh, if you just, hey, if you want, there's a gym right down. Oh my gosh. Like the moment you say something like that, I'm like, let's order another pizza. Like it's just it's this weird thing. But, I want to kind of bring us back to this article, Rebecca, because I think, now reading it and having this discussion, I see that a lot of what I'm dealing with now started back then.
Right. Oh, I'm sure. I have
absolutely.
no doubts about that. Well, let me just kind of, highlight the shifts. So, supposedly the solution for fatness in this country is dieting. I mean, you see it everywhere. Or it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. Well, paleo restricts things that are perfectly nutritious, so something like that is a diet, so you got to, even diets in disguise. A diet is when there's an express purpose of weight loss as a goal. Okay. A non-diet approach is focus on things you can control, which is your behaviors, which is your choices, and letting the weight do its thing, and it can be a very messed up thing when you're losing weight as a result of habits, but you're happy with the weight loss, but you want to be body positive. Again, another topic we're going to have to save for another podcast. But the bottom line is that there's a way to give credit to your habits and your behaviors that is about truly changing who you are and how you live your life. That is not dieting, and that's the difference. But right now, our solution is the dieting industry, which just results in weight cycling down and up, and the more times you diet, the more weight you gain. That's been proven scientifically as well. I'll share a link there. But they're more likely to eating disorders and depression, and there's been 50 years of research, 50 years, that show that eating disorders are the most deadly mental illness. So what we see is this really sick situation where we have seen that dieting is the solution that's presented to the medical community up until this month as the thing to do for kids. And they're more likely to lead to eating disorders and depression, and those are more likely lead to death. And I don't want to bring this up, but there has been cases over the past couple of years. One was a girl who had bulimia who was in boarding school who ended up committing suicide. Another was a boy who was 13 before his 14th birthday who wrote a letter. I'll share that in the show notes too. It's in the Washington Post, but wrote a letter detailing what was going on. And, you know, at the end of the day, suicide is never an option. Never, never, never an option. Ever. We need people to stay here. But you got to stop and look at this situation. How is it that we are so accepting of dieting when we have the evidence that it leads to eating disorders and depression? It's associated with bullying, associated with children not wanting to stay on this planet. It is a big problem when dieting is seen as the healthy thing to do. And that's why I think these guidelines finally are going in the right direction, because when something isn't helpful, it's time to stop doing it.
Yeah, dieting, and I'm over here shaking my head in agreement because, you know, again, Rebecca, I love being part of this podcast because, you know what, I benefit in so many ways. And one of the ways that I feel that I benefit is being able to actually release and let go of my story and put it out there. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, it's so interesting how when I was coming up and being an overweight little boy, you know, and all these guidelines being out there and being told that you're obese by your doctor and being teased, you know, not just by kids at school, but by family members who care about you, you know, but they're still putting those comments out there. I could see how that feeling was there, and it pains me and it hurts me to know that, you know, our most precious assets, our children in this country, are feeling this down about numbers on a scale or not fitting in the latest and greatest fashion trend, that they're willing to take their life. Just saddens me. And you know, that was a very powerful and very true statement that you made. It's not an option. And I want to make sure that, you know, as adults and all our listeners out there, you know, it's time that which we're doing now, is having a very open conversation about how we can really be supportive of our youngest and most important things, you know, which is our wonderful children and in our lives.
Yeah. And well, we have to stop believing the myth that dieting leads to any positive health outcome. And we have to stop closing our eyes and ignoring when we hear the word eating disorder. Yeah. You know, it's not the rich white girl disease. You know, it affects a lot of people. And, you know, we'll do another podcast about.
Absolutely. I'm the little round Latino kid that, you know, it's you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, because I have family that absolutely loves me and they show me their love through their food. So it's the same people that are pinching my cheeks and telling me, you know, mijo, you know, you're getting a little big, you're getting, or you'd be so handsome if you would lose a little weight. Those same people are making the most wonderful family dishes, and then they're asking me why I'm not eating. No tienes hambre, you're not hungry. Yeah. So, I mean, you're just raised with these contradictions. And I'll tell you what, as a child, absolutely it's confusing. And the whole idea of this whole dieting not working, I'm proof. Every time somebody told me about a diet, I went and ran the opposite way and ended up where I ended up, you know? And this is a like you said, we're going in the right direction now.
Yeah. Well, and your point about mixed messages, yes, that's one thing parents and people who care about younger, you know, youth, adolescents need to do is stop it with the mixed messages. You know, just because these are guidelines for doctors, I mean, and yes, print them out, share them with your doctor, spread the word like I was saying earlier, but this is stuff that anybody can benefit from and implement. And this goes back to your own individual body kindness practice. Don't do the mixed messages. So, you know, one of the things that they found that was associated with obesity and eating disorders was body image. And so we need to be promoting positive body image in our homes. And we need to work on our own body image.
Absolutely.
You know, you can only take people as far as you have gone. So when you're dieting in the house and, you know, but that's not okay for the kids, that's a mixed message. So, you know, you need to take stock of yourself as an individual and figure your stuff out so you can be in a good place to help the people you care about.
Great point. Great point. And reading this article and these guidelines really did make me kind of start thinking about how I'm going to be introducing this into my life so that it can be modeled genuinely for my child, not just Bennett, but if we have any more, you know.
Yeah.
And it did it. It was eye-opening. It was jarring, and it made me think about not just my childhood, but you know, even now, how genuine am I being with some of these things like body image, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so let me make a connection because I think the guidelines start to kind of make this connection, but it bears awareness sharing that we tend to believe that like obesity and eating disorders are kind of like two parallel lines that are never going to cross. And that is not true. Okay, so someone might have a fear of gaining weight or becoming fat because fat is bad in our country, right? And then do disordered habits or develop an eating disorder. That, I can resonate with that. I can resonate with the fear of my body going out of control, you know, uncontrollable weight gain. There's a certain look I wanted to maintain. And what I thought I needed to do was over-exercise and watch what I ate and sometimes barely eat, you know, in order to prevent that. So, you know, I feel like in my own experience that I've felt that they were intertwined. But then there's also the idea that, you know, by going on the diets, you can actually create binge eating. So there were 5 basically key factors that they figured out through the research, and I'm going to group 3 of them together. So the new guidelines, right? The AAP acknowledged that dieting, weight talk, and weight teasing are associated with obesity and eating disorders. So, you know, you try to prevent obesity and leads to eating disorders, or the fear of becoming obese leads to eating disorders, you know, that, I mean, think about that. Dieting associated with obesity. Like, that is just, light bulbs should be going off everywhere. You know, weight talk. Don't ever think that there's no harm in body bashing, because there is harm in that. And, you know, to me, teasing seems like the obvious one. Like, it's not a good thing. It's like bullying. But, you know, the weight talk, specifically, if you make a comment about your own weight, or you make a comment to a child to encourage weight loss, that's what you had.
Oh, yeah.
That's been the norm. And what these guidelines are saying is you can't do that anymore. You know, I'm going to share some quick stats. The dieting behaviors were associated with a 2-fold increase risk of becoming overweight. Okay, so dieting increases the risk for becoming overweight. That should ring the alarm bells. And a 1.5-fold increased risk of binge eating, which is associated with binge eating disorder or the eating disorder. You know, or you could binge and purge. That would be bulimia. So that, you know, is why the diet is bad, and you can't do that anymore. Not yourself, not for your kid, not in your family. And you really need to educate yourself about what is considered a diet and what isn't a diet. And there are plenty of non-diet resources. You know, government Choose My Plate. I'll share that link in there. You know, it's still nutritious eating and balanced eating, but the way you eat should feel good. You know, if you're not an intuitive eater, working on intuitive eating. You know, there is a way that is not dieting that doesn't involve eliminating foods you enjoy. The elimination should be for a medical reason or because you don't like that food. I mean, Burnie, how many people would you think say to you, oh, if I'm on a diet, all the chocolate cake I want, buddy? Like, how many people
Oh
make
yeah,
that mistake?
yeah. Oh no, absolutely. And you know what? And hearing you talk, and this, might resonate with some of our listeners too. I mean, we are so conditioned to diet, in one way or another, that hearing, this approach and the fact that we have to really, just eat in a healthy way that feels right, that feels good, that's not restrictive, that's hard to kind of start internalizing. And people, this is work. Don't think that it's not. This is going to take some soul searching, changing your views on the way that you're going to integrate this into your own life and how you're going to discuss this. But it's work that needs to be done in order for us to really, again, I go back to being there and being responsible and helping this next generation not deal with what we've dealt with, not have to go on a reality show to feel worthy or that they're finally healthy. This is going to take work. Don't you get it confused, listeners.
Yeah. Well, and then we talked before, I know, on a previous podcast, probably one of the earlier ones, when we talked about your experience on the reality show, that long term, whether or not you saw that show is really getting you healthy, and there's question as to whether or not it was helpful.
Yeah, we go back and forth, Rebecca. You and I, we are like oil and what is it, water here? Did I say that right? Is it? Anyways, yeah, we can continue to talk about this, and I invite it. But I know that with my time with you and the work that we've been doing, I find myself fighting myself in what I think a lot, and contrasting it with what body kindness is, and it keeps me up at night, and I've been putting in my work, and it's true, because I am trying to shift my entire mind around everything that we've been talking about in today's podcast, every comment that's ever been made to me, every way that I've been treated at different sizes throughout my life that have served to reinforce this idea of numbers and eating this, not eating this, dieting, So again, I look at this article and I applaud it. I know that there's still work that needs to be done. But when I look at it, I also think to myself, gosh, as a parent, I really have to figure my shit out. Like, and it's scary. And I don't cuss much on this podcast, but this article made me think, gosh, I gotta figure my shit out.
Well, one thing, and I'm sure this won't be the first, well, this is the first, it won't be the last, but I'm going to do a shameless plug for the book.
Do it.
So if you go to bodykindnessbook.com, you can learn all about the book that will be out December 27th, and it is available for pre-order.
So do it.
Yeah, and there'll be a lot more that we get into it later. But if you have the one question of what am I supposed to do if I don't diet, I mean, literally, besides listening to this podcast and any of the books that we talked about before, especially intuitive eating, but I am very proud to add my book to the list of resources that will help you figure that out, as you say. But continuing on, commercial and cut.
Yes.
The second finding, this is related to the weight talk. This is for you, Burnie. Listen up.
All right.
Parents who had conversations about weight had adolescents who were more likely to engage in dieting, unhealthy weight control behaviors, and binge eating. So now, mind you, this doesn't mean, okay, wait, what does that mean? That my kid never knows their number, that we never say anything. We don't acknowledge, like, what about acceptance and say, hey, you're fat. It's okay to be fat. It's comments made by family members about their weight or made to the child to encourage weight loss. So, I think that's really important to show the difference, is that, they're basically saying the weight talk is bad. And I do think that I agree that it's bad because, like you said, it's a number. It's a point of obsession. How do you rate that number in terms of health? But you don't get your child to a healthy well-being and self-worth and self-esteem by saying, well, just ignore your body and your appearance. I think it's through helping them understand the differences between weight and health, helping them understand size diversity. So at a really young age even, yeah, honey, people come in all types of shapes and sizes. And, yeah, honey, some people do a lot of exercise and some people not that much, and this is not a way we judge people. So I do think that there is a way at certain age appropriate times to have weight talk and conversations. I don't think you need to weigh your kids. I think the only reason to weigh is for a medical reason. They get that done. Take them to the pediatrician, focus on the habits and the things you can control. But you've really got to be mindful about how you talk about yourself around your kids. And even if you think you have a weight concern and you believe that there's a behavioral problem that needs to be addressed, which, by the way, that behavioral problem can occur whether or not there's a weight concern. Thin kids can have behavioral problems, people, eating behaviors and stuff, exercise, all that. But if you have those types of concerns, that it doesn't have to be a conversation about the weight and a conversation about weight loss. That's a conversation about habits and energy and feeling good. And that is what I think they're trying to get across with this guideline. It's not about the weight. So this is where I think they could have gone further, but I'm happy to see them put a line.
Yes, and when I was reading this too, and this is where the educator comes out in me, Rebecca, because there's so many wonderful teachable moments that can be guided by some of the suggestions made by these guidelines. And what I saw was an opportunity to tie a lot of this into the fabric of your family. In the discussions that you have, in the activities that you choose to engage in as a family. When I read this, I said, and I do mean that, I have to figure some of my shit out, but I also saw an opportunity to really dive into making my family genuinely engage in life in a more fun and a healthier way without having to, like you said, talk about numbers or the size or whatever. For example, one of the suggestions that they make, and I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead, is encouraging frequent meals, talking about how you can discuss physical activity and how you guys are going to engage in it as a family, as opposed to just discussing the numbers on a scale. And to me, how right away ideas of fun runs or the color runs or or getting my daughter in the kitchen with me to to make a meal, or even let's plant a seed and see what sprouts up. That's what I got really excited about when I read these guidelines. And going back to the whole scale thing, let me tell you, gosh, it's like every time you say something, it brings up a memory. And I hate to be that guy where I'm like, oh, I have a story about that. Oh, I have a story about that. But I do, damn it. I remember being a third grader, and one of an uncle, I don't know where they got it in their head, probably because I was that little round ball of fun, that would come to visit, thought that he would stick me on a scale along with some of my other cousins. And here I am in third grade. I remember the number, and I don't remember what I did yesterday, but I remember that I weighed 80 pounds in third grade, and that I was put on a scale, and that I was told that, wow, you weigh more than your sixth grade cousin or fifth grade. I don't know what. I didn't care about their grade. I just know that there was 80 pounds on a scale. I was in third grade, and I was horrified. And the fact that number pops back up to me is just, it's crazy that I even remember that. But yeah, when you say it, what really is the need, other than for medical purposes, at your children's pediatrician's office, that you need to be sticking a kid on a scale?
Yeah. Well, the weight is not something that we have absolute control over. If so, then every woman who had a baby would weigh their pre-pregnancy weight or whatever was on their license. Every man would be like, I'd look like this muscle and I'd weigh this exactly.
Yes.
And so, people get upset at me sometimes when I say focus on things you can't control, and one of the things you can't control is weight. But you can control your choices. You can control your behaviors and your decisions. And you did not jump ahead. It's great, actually. That's really what the guidelines say. The new guidelines now discourages physicians from focusing on weight when talking to their patients. And instead, they said focus on behaviors. And we can have a collective duh moment.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But this is a change. It didn't used to be that way. And they specifically encourage using motivational interviewing, which is the only way I've been able to help people is by using that style. And I'll share a link to that in the show notes. But it's basically goal-oriented lifestyle changes. And that gets into what is the person's interest, what are their desires, what's their hope and confidence, and ways that you can help improve that. And I'm not expecting doctors to become very skilled motivational interviewing counselors. That's not really your skill sets. Differential diagnosis, in and out. There is a specific purpose, but at least take note that you should have conversations about lifestyle regardless of your patient's weight, because all bodies need lifestyle conversations. And if nothing else, like you said, encourage family meals. That came out in the pediatrics recommendations, and have resources for them, for that next helping professional who can help with eating habits, exercise habits, body image, whatever it is that can help them in the motivational interviewing way and in a deeper way, because you guys align on philosophy and approach. But, the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. And the American Academy of Pediatrics is now coming out and saying diet is harmful. Weight talk is harmful. Weight teasing, harmful. Don't do it. And that's what people need to hear.
Yeah, and what I'm seeing here again, and I really like to kind of, and again, it excited me to see this. It made me take a step back because I'm like, oh my gosh, guess what, listeners? Guess what, Burnie? This is really putting the ball more so, I feel, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is how I feel, that was putting it in the court of the parents or whoever is the caregiver.
Yes.
It's not enough to just say, hey, you need to do this. Guess what, listeners? As a parent and as an educator, children don't do what we say, they do what we do. So I'm reading this thinking to myself, okay, again, it's about the fabric of the family. What am I going to do to promote this so that it's just part of who we are?
Yeah.
And it's part of how we bond and how we're closer. And guess what? If one activity doesn't work, oh my gosh, check this out. You can change it up. You can switch it. You don't have to stick with that.
Right.
No big deal. Find what works for your family and what's fun. But yeah, make sure it's active. Make sure it's fun and healthy and encourages body kindness. Yes.
And I think just to add to that, as parents, your kids need you to be the calm and confident one. So even if you're freaking out about your child's habits, weight, health, you can be doing more harm by engaging with those negative emotions around your kids. You said it earlier, Burnie, and that's been your experience. Our kids need us to be the one with the positive attitude. They need us. Even if you're struggling with, do I really believe in the ideas of health at every size, which I'll send a link to that. But if you look at the principles, it's about respect and individual choice, and that you can't, judge a book by its cover, basically. But if you're struggling with certain things, you can still be allowed where you need to be in your mindset today and still support your children and say, okay, I've been told that dieting is not the answer. Gosh, I got some work to do on me. How, while I do this work, can I help my kids be in the right direction? Go ahead.
And I was going to say, and again, I'm shaking my head in agreement because, I think you hit it on the head. The fact that you're acknowledging the fact that we may not be there, that we may be struggling, our listeners may be struggling with what it is that we're saying, that still, we still can be supportive and start making, and integrating these guidelines and these great changes into our families. We don't have to buy into everything right now, but guess what? This is something that is in the right direction, that will help out, and that I definitely stand behind, and can't wait to see more forward movement on this approach to wellness.
Yeah. And it's not all gonna look perfect or, have all your little ducks in a row the way we try to get organized like that. I think that, again, that having that awareness or that acknowledgement of, okay, so there's some work to do, whether that's in yourself, in your child, and how you're parenting your child, like that is, having work to do is not the failure. I see the failure is in refusal to do the work, so embrace that awareness. It's okay to have uncertainty. Calm and rational approaches will help you get yourself, your kids, your family going in the right direction. These should be things that are enjoyable, things that are pleasing, things that fit schedules. And, it's not that you see your kid is interested in a sport and you sign up for that. It's not that he's super excited to go to every single practice, but on the whole, he enjoys participating in that sport. And so, it is, I think if we could, I'm trying to really simplify it right now, like on the fly, if we can embrace the idea that there is size diversity and there are always going to be fat kids, they're born high on the growth curve and they trend high. We could recall that, with seeing some fat Olympians, that this, we know about diet culture and thin ideal. So if we can say, okay, there are people that are going to be healthy and unhealthy at a variety of sizes, but size diversity is real, and that it's about, well-being. It's about feeling good and feeling good about habits. If you're not at a place where you feel good and you feel good about your habits, that's the work. That how you get there is through the practice of body kindness, not dieting, not body bashing and having negative weight talk, because that's going to hurt body image. We want a positive body image, not weight teasing, of course. But again, I feel that one sounds ridiculous. What parent would think that weight teasing would be helpful? But I do think that a lot of people think that maybe what we need is a jump start with my child, and let's cut out, bread and carbs or whatever.
Rebecca,
No,
it's
no,
funny
no.
you say that. No, there are people out there. I've witnessed it. I've heard it in talks that I've given around the country. I've witnessed it firsthand. Yes, there are people that genuinely believe that this teasing, of their children or a young one in their family, a niece, a nephew, is they're doing their part to be honest with them and to not sugarcoat life. And you're a fat little kid. You need to, do you want to be made fun of your whole life? Never, do you not want to find a date to prom? Like, yeah, you got to get started on this. Like it, Rebecca, you are a leader in this industry, but let me tell you what I've witnessed both personally and across the country. And I know you've given many speeches, but you have, and I've noticed this, you have a really open, not all the time, but you have some open people that are on the same page with you, that are like, they're going to you because they know you're leading this industry in a different direction. But some of the people I get, believe me, when they hear, ex Biggest Loser contestant, they're like, I told my kid he was fat the other day and he just doesn't listen. He's still sitting on the couch. And
Oh
I mean,
gosh.
it's there,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Oh, that makes me really sad. And usually when I see stuff like that, unfortunately, I'm working with a child with an eating disorder that needs to go to a higher
Yeah,
level of care.
you see it.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you see it on that end, but there's times where these parents are saying this with the child right next to them, and it
Oh,
takes everything in me
yeah.
to not just want to hug their kid, and the parents gonna, and for my listeners out there, yes, I am huggy, and I know sometimes I look at it, I'm like, oh gosh, I just want to hug this poor kid, and of course you can't go hugging around kids, being a parent, I'm like, don't hug my kid, but you see that face, and I see myself in a lot of these kids, and yeah, they're just like, they're they almost have their heads down and they're shaking, like, they're shaking their head and,
Yeah.
in shame almost. And, but
Well, not
listen,
almost shame. It is shame.
no, it
And
is. It absolutely is. And they're like, I can't believe you're telling this guy who was on TV that, this is what I'm doing or not doing. And you're just like, oh no, because now they're going to remember, yeah, I remember that time you said something in front of that guy who was on that TV show. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to be part of that memory.
Yeah.
Like, I have enough of those. I don't want to be part of somebody
Well,
else's
what
memory.
you
Like,
can be part of is calling out negative stuff when you
yes,
hear it with confidence. And now you can cite the American Academy of Pediatrics. And that's
that's what I plan
something
on
that,
doing.
parents can do. And you can take it to your doctors and all that stuff. But I do want to ask you, I want to make sure we wrap up in the next couple of minutes. I feel like we could talk forever, though. But I want to ask you a question. Hypothetically, suppose your 12-year-old daughter starts talking about concerns about her weight and her shape and her body. What would you say?
Again, I just started diving into this, but I do know personally what I've dealt with, and what I'd love to do, and I plan on doing is just being able to have open and honest conversations with her and talk about all the things that her body does for her
Mm-hmm.
and the things that she is able to do. And because I know that I am going to work to make sure that my family engages in fun activities.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be able to talk about how we've enjoyed those things as families and how everything that we've talked about up until then celebrates how miraculous and wonderful our bodies are. So I want to be to kind of take that approach and just take it from, first of all, having a very meaningful conversation, and then just letting her know exactly what we talked about, which is bodies do come in different sizes, and people are genetically different, but we as a family have been able to share in some really good things. So let's start focusing on that. But I also, Rebecca, and I want to put this out there, do want to have uh, honest conversations about bullying or things
Mm-hmm.
that she feels that I don't want to just shut it down by saying, oh my gosh, well, we do active things and your body's great or this or that. Like, I am that cheerleader-ish. I can be, but I'm also a realist because I got my butt kicked by bullies. And I want to say, listen, you're going to hear these types of things, but let me tell you how beautiful I think you are and how capable I think you are. Let's acknowledge the fact that you were made to feel this way about somebody who in reality doesn't understand what we understand, which is how wonderfully capable you are of
Mm-hmm.
things and how much good that you are going to do and put out in this world as you grow. So let's accept that. Let's hear that. I don't want to say accept it. Let's hear that, and let's talk about how we're going to go ahead, let it have its time in your head and get it out, because we have things to do, baby.
Yeah.
We're going in a different direction.
Yeah. No, that's an amazing, amazing answer. And the body gratitude like that, the appreciation that, you don't have to wait for there to be
And
a
then when I'm
comment or
not
a
going
problem.
to cry afterwards, I'm not gonna let her see me, but later that night, I'm gonna cry and look for that person and threaten them.
Well, but it might not come
Uh,
externally, like we didn't say anything about how your daughter actually looked. She could
no,
look like a
I know.
fashion model and still have a body
I
concern.
want my listeners. Oh, absolutely. And I want the listeners to know I'm being honest,
Yeah.
because I literally, like, part of me will just get angry and break and then try to do something. But in reality,
Hmm.
I just want to raise my daughter in a way where she understands that it is okay to acknowledge that this is going to happen, because life is not as beautiful as I want to make it for her,
Hmm.
but she is going to possess the support, and I will work hard the internal strength to get past it,
Yeah.
and to, again, give it its time, but move on, because we
Yeah.
have work to do.
Work to do. Yeah. The only other thing that I would add, I feel like I would do everything that you were talking about. It was great. I feel like the only other thing I would add is I would ask more questions too. So kind of like um, something like, tell me what is disappointing you about your habits lately. So I
Hmm.
would really want to shift the conversation to habits. So because she might be talking about her weight or shape and appearance, and she might actually really mean that she is disappointed with her self-care in some way, and
Okay.
that could be, you know what I'm saying, it could be related to
Yeah.
puberty or cravings or who knows what, or just going out with kids with a pizza and felt that she got too full, or who knows what, but like I feel like I would try to ask more questions about, well, tell me what's upsetting you, and try to get more information. And then how can we go through in a calm and rational way, talk about, that locus of control and choices and patterns and what she feels good about and doesn't feel good about. And I think bringing it back to health and well-being outside of appearance, bringing it back to behaviors and choices, and letting them see me as an ally and a supporter to help them become the happy, healthy person they want to be. That, I think, is also a very important part of helping a child deal with weight concerns they have or body concerns.
No, absolutely. But Rebecca, please, maybe it's just me, but you wouldn't want to secretly just kind of air punch the person if it was an external thing. And I'm saying this because you are the RD. I mean, I don't know.
I'd like to take care of anyone who anyone who messed.
I know, and I love what you're saying. Absolutely, I agree with, really just getting in there and questioning and kind of trying to get to the root of it. But I also want to know that you would air punch somebody. Up there about that. Thank you.
Okay. On that note, I thought, great conversation. I have to re-listen so I get all my ideas for show notes because I didn't take them. But we will close out on this. I'm doing something new with clients and I love it, and it's basically an affirmation / wishes / gratitude jar, and it's basically just positive quotes and other things that I have written down and put on all these beautiful colorful pieces of paper, and it's in my office, and clients are invited to read one before they leave or create one of their own. And I kid you not, I just reached in and grabbed the pink one, just the one I saw on top. And I wanted to read this as we close out for listeners. So this one says, I am beautiful. I am kind. I am enough. I can do anything.
Awesome.
So creepy how that, I feel like that really
just
made sense.
Fit right in. Your hand just kind of gravitated towards the one that needed to be shared today.
It's a miracle.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, Rebecca, I just want to thank our listeners for listening in. I want to thank them for helping us be advocates for this. And I love your suggestion about printing it out, getting it to your loved ones, getting it to those parents in your life, getting it to the physicians in your life, letting them know that this is where you're coming from and this is what you're now going to introduce into the lives of the children in your care. That was a great suggestion, and I really hope our listeners take that to heart.
Yeah, and you got to start somewhere. If you would like a free resource, I would get my health and happiness journal. You can track habits that matter to you most, and you get that when you sign up for my email list at RebeccaScritchfield.com.
Absolutely. And again, I can't help it. I got to get the last word in. Listeners, if we're talking about doing the work, that really is a great place that you can start. Go to RebeccaScritchfield.com. Let's start doing the work ourselves so that we can genuinely start being wonderful support systems and advocates for the children in our lives.